wrong question.
I don't know. I think you're probably ahead of schedule, aren't you?
Oh, I'm still ahead, am I? Oh, crikey, that's good. I'm getting in trouble with these councillors all over the place today. So Nicholas, can you hear me all right?
I'm slightly hard of hearing, but I can hear you all right.
I'm used to Alan. He's slightly hard, so I'm always used to yelling in this direction, so that's fine. So you have 10 minutes. Within the 10 minutes, try and fit a few questions from councillors, because they always have a few questions. And it's really good at the beginning if you can tell councillors a little bit about who you are and where you fit in Hawke's Bay.
Sure. Okay, well, I'll cover that first. Actually, I'm a private citizen now. I have in the past been an elected representative in Southern Hawke's Bay. 3 terms I've served from 1989, but I'm a self-employed person. I haven't got a huge amount to add to my specific submission, which is about 3 paragraphs long, which you've no doubt read. So I'll just carry on from that. The Manawatu River rises in Southern Hawke's Bay and it flows west, and this is the reason why Southern Hawke's Bay was split off from the Hawke's Bay in 1989 and made part of the Manawatu-Wanganui Regional Council, the Horizons. But Southern Hawke's Bay had been in the Hawke's Bay province for the previous 130 years, and for many years paid rates to the Hawke's Bay Harbour Board and elected 1 member of the Harbour Board. The board owned land in Dannevirke alongside the railway line and operated a fuel depot at Taharaiti, south of Dannevirke, like an inland port. The last board member elected to represent Southern Hawke's Bay was the late Marcus Poole, a Dannevirke lawyer who oversaw the transfer of a 1/12th share in the Port of Napier to the Horizons Council to acknowledge the rate contributions made by Southern Hawke's Bay over the years. More than 20 years ago, the Horizons chairman, the late Don Linklater, said the 1/12th share was allocated to the region, not an area of it. So the Southern Hawke's Bay connection was studiously ignored thereafter. So too when the Hawke's Bay Regional Council bought the shares in 2009. The Southern Hawke's Bay connection to the 1/12th share was denied in spite of the protestations of the elected representatives of the Tararua district. And to this day, Southern Hawke's Bay has received nothing from either regional council to acknowledge our contribution of the 1/12th value of the port. By 2009, the Southern Hawke's Bay tag on that parcel of shares had been removed altogether. The Southern Hawke's Bay share had been misappropriated. Now, what am I asking on behalf of the community of Southern Hawke's Bay? I'm asking an acknowledgement of the details of this appraisal, and I'm asking you to quantify it. It's all documented. It's not like ancient treaty sort of claims. So I had planned to bring this before the Regional Council next year, but just working in my own time, but the pace has picked up, and I've, even though I'm not prepared fully, I've decided that it's important for the Regional Council to make a decision on it, or make a determination on my points early in the piece. Otherwise your figures are not going to add up. I would imagine it would have been tempting to ignore this submission because I'm out of zone. Southern Hawke's Bay is not in your territory, so I'm encouraged that you've given me time, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate that. And for what it's worth, I've found the consultation process flawless. So thank you very much for hearing this short submission, short but important, and indeed I'm available to answer any questions yourself or the councillors have.
Thank you, Nicholas. Question, Alan?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Neil?
Thanks, Nicholas. Now, I was actually on the Harbour Board in the late 80s.
Yep.
And just my question is, tell me whether my memory is right on this or not. In the last term of the Harbour Board, for the first time, Dannyverk or Southern Hawke's Bay was represented by Marcus Poole, as you say. And then the local government reorganisation came around in 1989. And because there were 12 members of the Harbour Board and Dannyverk or Southern Hawke's Bay had one representative, albeit only for one term, then the Commission decided that the regional council for that area, in other words Horizons, should be given 1/12 of the shares in the port company.
That's right.
That's as I recollect, and that's the local government commission determining that.
That's right.
That's right, yes.
So that's how Southern Hawke's Bay got that 1/12 share, invested in Horizons Regional Council, and then in the later on in the sometime later, the Regional Council actually purchased that share of Horizons.
2009.
That would be right. So that's about right?
Yes, what I'm not sure about is just how many terms the board had a Dannyverk representative on it. I don't think only one. I think it's historical.
That's my memory, but I could be wrong.
Okay,
So
Neil?
Just a question on the transaction in 2009, Mr. Hill. We paid for the share. We paid for those, didn't we? Did we hand the cheque over to Horizons?
Yes.
So are you coming back for another payment, or what are you asking of us now? Do you want the money back again, or?
Southern Hawke's Bay didn't receive anything from that.
But it went to Horizons, didn't it?
We went to Horizons.
Should you take it up with Horizons? Should you ask them for the money? Because someone got the money, didn't they?
The Hawke's Bay Regional Council got the money.
No, we paid the money.
Yeah. Yes, the Horizons got the money.
Yes.
But we were prompting them every step of the way.
For what?
To say, hey, that's our money.
Yes.
I think he's saying that, sorry, I don't want to put words in your mouth, you're suggesting that Tararua District should have got these proceeds.
Well, there's a difficulty there because the Tararua District is made up of two halves, Northern Wairarapa and Southern Hawke's Bay. So there wasn't harmony there, in which case one side could scuttle the other, perhaps, you know.
I'll just follow up on where Councillor Curtin's been at. As I understand it, there was a proportion when the government created the port companies, in the end it allocated a portion, and it did so primarily on the regional councils. And because, and regional councils were based on river catchments, and you're quite right, the river catchment went south down there, and because it was in the area of the Hawke's Bay, then a portion of the shares went to the regional council that was responsible for that catchment, i.e. Horizons. At some stage, Horizons and the Hawke's Bay Regional Council had a discussion, and the Hawke's Bay Regional Council paid to Horizon's value of the shares they held on its behalf, bought their share portfolio out. The money was transferred to them, and the value of that now sits with Horizons. So what Councillor Curtin's asking, having paid fair value for the shares, which were attributed to the area you're representing, the money therefore rests in Horizons, and what do we as a regional council here in Hawke's Bay have to do with this anymore? We have the shares, yes, but we paid for them. So surely your issue is with Horizons.
It's with the dividends and the whether Southern Hawke's Bay gets anything for its share. And the answer is no, it has never had anything for its share, except Horizons has said, oh yes, well of course it goes for the greater good of the regional council ratepayers to keep the rates lower. And so, as I said, Southern Hawke's Bay got no benefit at all.
Thank you, Nicholas. We've gone over our time, but it was, as you can see, that there were 3 councillors who were deeply interested in the history of this, and I think so it was well worth you coming in. I thank you for coming
Thank you very much for hearing
such
me.
a long way.
It's quite an intriguing little conundrum.
You've taken us all down memory lane.
Yeah.
I said you've taken us all down memory lane.
Yeah. That's right. I'm sorry to do that, but it has been
that was
sort of almost swept under the carpet all these years. It's worth getting a determination on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nicholas.
Cheers.
William Dickie.
Thank you.
Welcome, William. So just in case you weren't here, you've got 10 minutes.
Yes.
And if you use the whole 10 minutes, that's fine. It's your 10 minutes. But if you want councillors to ask a question, you've got to manage that within that time space. And it's really useful for councillors, and I'll click the button in a second, if you just tell them a bit about yourself and how you fit in here.
Understood.
I think they can guess, but it'll be quite good. Thank you. Floor is yours.
Yeah, good afternoon, councillors. Thank you very much for seeing us. I guess you've had a long day. I saw there's a heap of submissions come in, so holy moly. My name's William Dickie. I'm submitting on behalf of Roger Dickie New Zealand Limited, who has forest established in the region. We represent 2,300 investors and 29,000 hectares of radiata forest. 80% of those are in the Hawke's Bay and Gisborne region, and 56 of these forest properties are in the Hawke's Bay Regional Council catchment. I'll start by saying that we support option B, where the council suggests selling up to 49% of the shareholding to fund the future development, and I'd like to briefly talk on a couple of points on the present day operations. Excuse me. The region is obviously very aware of the so-called wall of wood that's beginning to come on stream. Our company has engaged the port on forecast export log volumes for many years. We had, Andrew Locke, the former commercial manager at the Napier Port, speak at our conference at 2014, and he discussed how the port was scaling up and aligning the port infrastructure, particularly for the onslaught of forest wood products. We're currently harvesting the company we represent is currently harvesting around 700,000 jazz, which is tonnes, up from 400,000 tonnes last year, and expected to be over 1 million tonnes next year, where it will remain. That that harvested volume is split 80% export and 20% domestic. Our anticipated volume through the Napier Port is 9 million tonnes. The point I want to make here is that we really need, the wall of wood has arrived, it's coming. We need the infrastructure available immediately, so we encourage the Hawke's Bay Regional Council to make an informed decision as quickly as possible, and then enable the development of the port to happen immediately with as little red tape as possible. We're here, we're scaling up, and we're already sort of starting to see some bottlenecks, so we really want to push that, and we're jump into it. A couple of things on competitiveness. Eastland Port and Centre Port, although not at the moment with its hold-ups, are recognised as some of the most efficient log export ports in New Zealand. Obviously, they're single use, particularly Gisborne. These efficiencies, flexibility and storage options and recognition of break bulk vessel priority over cruise ships significantly enhances the attractiveness of, in our case here, Eastland Port in particular, to forest owners. Inefficiencies at the Napier Port and escalating port costs mean that overall costs for the forest owner are higher than these adjacent ports. I have a couple of examples of this. One, obviously, we're all aware of is the removal of log loading ships when a cruise ship comes in. I understand that that is to happen 8 times in January alone. So a cruise ship which is booked in over a certain length turns up at the port. The log ship has to untie, go to sea for 8 hours while the cruise ship's in, and then come back in. Obviously, that's not very efficient when you've sort of got everything mobilised and the ship tied up. There's a cost to do that. We have space allocation for logs at the port in more than one place. So a logging truck which has 2 grades of logs, you know, and a small skid side out on a steep forest or wherever, brings 2 grades of logs to the port and will have to line up and unload logs in one area, then go to the back of the queue in another area of the port and line up to unload again. So there's inefficiencies where you spend twice as long in the queue. There's inefficiencies, obviously, in unloading equipment when a train turns up. So priority goes to get the rail service turned around and trucks can end up queuing. And the port has recently removed the log loading gantry, the trailer loading gantry, which piggybacks the trailers onto the trucks so they can return to the forest. So this is a service that every other port in New Zealand does offer. It's been removed. I'm not really sure why, which now means that A, you've got to get a private operator, so it's not all hours, and then B, you have to take your truck unloaded round the town or to another yard to get your trailer put on. So these efficiencies that are I haven't got enough time. These efficiencies which are starting to kind of slip into the port system now are making forest owners, ourselves in particular, who has a large catchment in the Wairoa region, consider other options, in particular the Eastland Port. We know that forestry is a significant driver of economic growth. NZIER guesstimated that it was 222 million of GDP into the region in 2017. And anywhere where there is a bottleneck, then capacity is decreased, which is obviously not good for the Greater Hawke's Bay Regional Council. We encourage the port to 2 things. One, move urgently to greenlight the terminal building in the first instance and the development as quickly as possible. But then we also encourage councillors to support and explore ways that the existing port can operate more efficiently inside its current limitations. Thank you.
Thank you, William. That was really good. Questions? Tom, for a start, and then Alan.
It's been suggested to us that we should put this to, so you've used urgent a few times. We should put this to a referendum, which would be next year in October, pushing a decision on this until to 2020. Could you provide us at some point with some kind of indication as to what the consequence of that would be to your business? Not necessarily right here now, obviously, but...
Yeah, absolutely. We, as I said, our volume, and we only represent a small volume of the commercially grown forest in the Hawke's Bay region, but we've come from 400,000 jas to 700,000 jas this year and 1 million jas, tonnes of wood next year, which is, I think it works out at 1 log ship every 10 days. My father always says that forest owner is like a farmer, where we get what's left at the end, right? So everybody else gets paid, the harvester, the freight, the stevedoring, and then the forest owner gets what's left at the end. So every dollar counts, and if there's efficiencies to move the logs to a separate port, or in the instance of Wanganui, the logs don't come across there because the yard is owned privately, not, I guess, independently run.
You think it's urgent?
Yeah, I can't stress how urgent
Who was
it
it?
is.
Was someone? There was these 2, and then we've got 3 lining up. Alan, can you keep the question sharp so we can get the 3 in?
Have you got these problems with the port documented?
Yes, sorry, I brought a copy of what I spoke to, absolutely.
I have a copy because
Yeah, I brought copies for
I'm
everyone.
the chair of the Transport Committee. We've got a meeting on Friday.
Perfect.
We've got a port representative on the committee
Peter.
to talk
So,
to about these
Yeah,
things.
happily come and talk too.
Thank you
Neil,
for your
then you.
submission and coming today. Now, you say in the submission that the port is not now competitive with other ports and is costing us a significant amount. And you've gone on and talked about logging ships having to leave the port. And you said there's 8 going to have to happen in the next 12 months because of cruise ships coming.
Yes.
Has that happened previously? Or is this a...
I think it happened slightly last summer, but I don't know the ins and outs of it. I'm told that from the exporter. And we're told by the port.
The situation's getting exacerbated, right? Okay, so the inefficiency and the lack of competitiveness that you're talking about is not to do with what the port's charging, it's to do with the loading and unloading.
Yes,
right?
so anywhere that there's a bottleneck and logs have to either stay on a truck in a queue, so the truck can't do a further load, or spend time dropping it into 2 queues or putting it in off-site storage,
Yep.
that adds a cost which
Sure.
the forest owner
Same
will.
as fruit growers, Peter.
Yeah.
Neil.
Thank you, that's a good
So
clarification.
a quick question. You've mentioned a $1 million tonne export requirement for your business or
Yes.
businesses. And did I hear you right in saying that it was a 9 million tonne total for the sector?
The Roger Dickie group of forest and the Hawke's Bay regional catchment represent approximately 9 million tonnes of wood.
Exported annually?
To be exported in the current tree crop harvest.
I see, but 1 million tonne a year?
Yes.
There's a submitter today suggested an asset replacement charge of $5.50 a tonne. What would be the impact on your business from that sort of impost for asset replacement?
You can be quick on that answer.
Yeah, Jesus. The net return to a forest owner might be $40 a tonne, approximately. So significant.
5 off of 40.
Fenton, we're out of time. You always give me a hard time for not letting
5%,
process, but
that's
I'm going to allow your question.
Seriously?
Yep. It's the end of the day. Come
I
on.
think my brother was submitting next, and he's now not submitting.
He's now not submitting, yeah. So, but we can't take that into account. But
Would you consider using the remote railhead of Whitehall when the log train gets going?
Yes, we're actually in talks with the port to do that now.
Right.
Kiwi Rail are pricing themselves out of the market. By the time you get the logs to a railhead, there's an approximate $4 or $5 a tonne cost to get the logs off the trailer into the yard and then back off the yard onto the train. So if it's every dollar counts, and if it's competitive, we will. But
Thank you.
Thank you very much. There was tremendous. You can see the amount of questions that were being asked, William. So, you definitely stir them up. And it's really interesting because at the end of the day, you were the last speaker and you're quite different to the others. So thank you very much.
that's good.
Okay.
Yeah, no red tape. Let's get into it.
Thank you, William.
So, councillors, that is our last submission for the day. So that's
Adjourn tomorrow, do we? Adjourn till tomorrow?
we're adjourned till tomorrow, yeah.
What time we start tomorrow?